there lovelies, it's Sarah Leonard here from acatlikecuriosity.com, and this is my very first Artcast. And just to explain my thoughts behind the Artcast, it's kind of a cross between a podcast and a chance to have a look at the behind the scenes of some of my art processes. So you can see as I'm talking me creating a journal page spread in my art journal, but whilst that is going on, I'm going to be talking about different topics, usually, although not exclusively, related to the art that I'm creating in the video. If you want to listen to this as just a traditional podcast, of course you can, just press play and then go about your day. But I found with podcasts that I would find my mind wandering, and therefore I wouldn't be able to concentrate very well, and I would miss whole chunks by just sort of being a bit easily distracted. So that's why I came up with the idea of an Artcast. So today's Artcast, the very first one, is about loving yourself no matter what, and ways that we can do that even if we make a huge mistake. Now this very first Artcast is very real and very honest, because in the video anyway you will see that I make a massive mistake, a big huge oops moment right at the very end that almost ruins the whole project. But still I manage to keep going, keep on, keep positive, and I don't let it derail me from my journey. I wasn't always this kind of positive sort of person. I have found that to be quite difficult in the past. But recently I've kind of gotten into a practice of really looking after myself a little bit better and valuing myself more. I think one thing that's really quite telling when you really think about self-care and loving yourself and taking good care of yourself is comparing the way you speak to yourself or about your own talents and gifts to the way that you would speak about the talents and gifts of friends or loved ones. Often I find that this is radically different. So things that you will say to yourself about your own creative endeavours, about your own business ideas, about whatever it is, are so much harsher than anything you would ever say to a friend or a loved one or a relative. You wouldn't do that to them, because it's a horrible thing and a horrible way to be. So why do it to yourself is my question. That's one thing that I tend to think about when it comes to looking after yourself, is your self-talk, the things that you say to yourself, about the things you make, about the things you do. That's quite important for that to be supportive, and for that inner sort of dialogue to be understanding and able, and that it allows you, I suppose, to make mistakes. If you're going to make mistakes, there's no sense in beating yourself up about those. It needs to be something that you can accept about yourself. So that's kind of where I'm at with regards to loving yourself. The first port of call is to sort of look at your own personal inner dialogue and the things that you say to yourself, and compare that to the way that you would speak to someone that you love, or a friend, or even a co-worker. And if you find yourself saying things in your own inner dialogue, whether it's about your art, whether it's about your life, whether it's about your looks, your appearance, whatever it's about, if you find yourself saying things that you would never say to someone else, then it's time to have a word with your own inner dialogue and your own inner critic. So how can we best monitor our own thoughts and feelings? One practice is to journal, and that could either be art journaling or it could be writing out your thoughts and feelings. I've recently started a practice of what I'm calling morning pages, a little bit like the morning pages idea in the book The Artist's Way. But for me, instead of writing the things down, what I'm doing instead is creating artwork in my journal pages instead, often with a theme and often with words involved, but for me that seems to fit better. It seems to sit more nicely, and it makes more sense for me to sort of process my own thoughts and feelings in that kind of a way. I think it's best to get those kind of gremlin voices out of your head a little bit, And I think it's also good to share those inner gremlin voices with other people if you can. So for example, posting on supportive Facebook communities might be a way forward for you. You might want to share some of your horrible dark thoughts and things that you've said about or to yourself with people there, and you'd be surprised at how many people will go, oh my god, I've done that too. But also you might find yourself surprised with people saying, do you know, you really shouldn't say that about yourself, or you really shouldn't think that about yourself, you're a much better person than you think you are. And you can get that kind of validation in that way, or from friends and family. Of course, they can be a good resource to turn to if you find that your inner voice and your inner critic isn't supportive of the idea of loving yourself, and loving yourself regularly on a day-to-day basis, not just when you've been your most perfect self and you've done all of the dishes in the sink and you've got your house clean and tidy and all of that nonsense. Every day, regardless of how imperfect or bonkers you may be on that particular day, it's important that we all accept and love ourselves, I think, just as we are, not this perfect version of ourselves that we're often striving towards reaching. So that's one way to sort of foster more feelings of self-love, I think, is by just sort of being very mindful of your inner critic voice and sharing those concerns and feelings with others that you trust, because often that blows those thoughts and feelings out of the water. You realise straight away that they're not valid and you should give them no time, because they're not important, and they're also quite often not really true. They're very, very harsh, the things that we say to ourselves and via our inner critic. It's not always true, and it's even the tiniest proportion of it that may be true. It's just too harsh. It's too full on. It's not necessary to be that harsh with yourself or that hard on yourself. So that's the first stage. Other things that I do to try and remind myself of the need for me to love and accept myself in order for other people to love and accept me too. It's very difficult to love and accept someone when they clearly don't love themselves, I think. So other things that I do on a day-to-day basis are just really simple things like taking care of myself. So I make sure I have my vitamins every day. I make sure I have food, particularly for breakfast, that I know will support me. I wrote a little bit about this on the blog a little while ago because I have suffered in the past from depression. And there are certain foods obviously that you can have that will help with that side of things. So for example, things like pumpkin seeds and bananas and all of that kind of thing. There's a lot of detail on that on the blog. You can check that out. So I make sure that I do those things every day. Make sure I have those vitamins. I make sure I have those pumpkin seeds, that banana in the morning. I make sure I have everything that's good for me and that's going to support me and help me get through the day in a more calm and loving way towards myself. That's what I focus on. Other things that I do include, recently anyway, allowing myself a little bit more time. I'm really bad, I think, often at calming down and allowing things to take time. I can be very hard on myself, very pushy about how quickly I want to get this done and that done, and how much of a success I want this or that to be, and I can be very cross and very stern with myself sometimes about those kinds of things. So I want to, and often I would actually find myself kind of going through the day with a whole list of tasks to be done and working away and getting them all done, but then realising that actually I haven't eaten anything or had a drink of water or anything for 3 hours, and I haven't moved out of the chair, and I feel really uncomfortable and horrible and hungry and tired and headachy. Whereas now I kind of allow myself little breaks to go and have something to eat, which just sounds like a small silly thing, but I think especially if you're creating your own business, and if it's a business doing something that you love, like creating art, like I do love doing that, I can very easily let that take over every second of every day of all of my time, and then there's no time left for anything else. And those other little tiny things are still quite important. You know, you need to drink and you need to eat and you need to go to the loo sometimes. I found myself bursting to go to the loo because I've just been work, don't stop till it's done, don't stop till it's done, and that's not really very healthy. So that's another small thing, and a small way that you can show yourself that you love yourself every day by allowing yourself to just be human and have needs and have those needs be met without there being loads and loads of conditions about how much work you have to get done first. So that's quite important, I think. And other things that I do to try and help me to be more accepting of myself include affirmations. I have a page in my diary planner that I use every day, and I have my daily affirmations on there, and I use them using a technique called EFT or tapping. So I say these different daily affirmations whilst tapping on various different points in the body, and the affirmations that I use every day are these ones. So I'll tap and I'll say, I'm so lucky. Thanks, universe, for taking care of me. Good things happen to me every day. I'm so blessed and grateful. Money flows to me easily. I deserve abundance. The more I forgive, the more money I earn. I allow myself to receive. Even though I have these fears and doubts, I deeply and completely love myself. That one's a really powerful one. I am good enough. It's okay for me to win. It's okay for good things to happen to me. I am worthy. I give myself permission to shine. I love myself no matter what. I'm growing more beautiful each day. As I love myself, I allow others to love me too. I trust my feelings and insights. I do what I do for me and my family. I do what I do to help others be more creatively centered. I am good enough. So those are my daily affirmations. And I finish off my affirmation round with a Denise Duffield Thomas exercise where you put your hand on your heart and take a deep breath. And you say out loud, it's my time now and I'm ready for the next step. So that just kind of helps that whole process of doing that. I try to do that every day. Occasionally it doesn't happen, but I try to do that every day just as reminders. Some days I don't feel like doing it. Some days those affirmations seem very false to me and I think, why am I even doing this? Like, I don't really think this. But even on those days, I keep going, I keep saying them. And I have felt quite a large seismic kind of shift in my own sort of personal feelings and my own kind of mood, my own success as well with the business, since making time for myself every day in those small ways. So just to recap a little bit, here are some of the things that I use on a day-to-day basis to help me to remember that I am worthy and that I should love myself every day. So I make sure that I am conscious of my inner critic voice, and I make sure to shut down any really negative voices coming from there. I recognise them for what they are and dismiss them from my head. I know they're not real. I take care of myself in smaller ways by using things like vitamins and foods that I know that are good for me and that will support me on my journey. And I use daily affirmations and EFT to help really strengthen those affirmations as I say them. So those are my daily self-care routines alongside the morning pages that I do most days. I don't necessarily do every day because some days there just isn't time. Some days you need to be up and out and busy and doing things and there just isn't the time for them. But most days I do manage to get out my thoughts and feelings using my morning pages in my journal. And for me that looks like artwork rather than writing. But for you that might just be pages and pages of writing. It's entirely your choice. So I just wanted to end with being really positive on the idea that you should be making sure to love yourself every day, no matter what happens in the day, no matter how imperfect you are. Embrace the imperfectness and love yourself anyway.